reason that I bring that up is that was in May of 2000. I went to celebrate graduating from college and went over to some people's house that I had done a research paper with. And long story short, ended up back home. I had no idea how I'd gotten home. I'd somehow left my underwear along the way. My wife was really upset with me.
I bet she wasn't real happy about that.
And the only thing that I could think of in order to kind of get the heat off was I will go to AA. And so my adult trip into AA began in the summer of 2000.
Hello, friends of Bill W. and other friends. You have landed on Sober Speak. My name is John M. I am an alcoholic. We are glad you are all here, especially newcomers. Newcomers, that is, both to recovery and newcomers to Sober Speak. Sober Speak is a podcast about recovery centered around the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. My job here on Sober Speak is simple. My job is to provide a platform for the amazing stories of recovery all around us. As I like to say, real stories, real recovery. Consider Sober Speak, if you will, your meeting between meetings. We welcome all of your comments, and you can contact us in a couple of different ways. You can go to SoberSpeak.com, click on the Contact Us tab, and from there you can contact us in two ways. Number one, you can just leave us an email at feedback@soberspeak.com, or you can click on the microphone icon and leave us a message with your thoughts. We'd love to hear from you. Please leave your first name only, as we can play back your message during our listener feedback segment, if it is PG rated. Please remember, we do not speak for AA or any 12-step community. We represent only ourselves. We are here to share our experience, strength, and hope with those who wish to come along for the ride. Take what you want, leave the rest at the curb. And keep this in mind, our episode today is brought to you by Don C. Don C. went to the website, SoberSpeak.com, clicked on the donate tab, and made a contribution. Thank you, Don C., for your generous contribution. This episode is for you. By the way, our previous episode, if you did not get a chance to listen in, was from Greg. Greg's episode is entitled The Gratitude Man. That is his self-proclaimed moniker. And you can go in and listen to that. There's a mighty good episode. A couple of program notes. We are now available on Google Podcast. If you have a, Android phone, it is an app that you can download now. Search for Sober Speak to separate words, and you can download our podcast. Also, we are available on Spotify. We've been getting a lot of traffic there lately, and iHeartRadio as well. You can go to Alexa, believe it or not nowadays, and say, hey Alexa, play Sober Speak podcast, and voila, you can do the dishes or whatever you're doing, and you can listen to Sober Speak at the same time. Keep in mind, we're going to have some listener feedback toward the end of this episode today with Chris Yu. You heard Chris Yu on the beginning there. He's going to tell you about his West Texas upbringing to the doors of Alcoholics Anonymous. But that's enough of all that. Enjoy Chris Yu. Okay, so we are sitting here with Mr. Chris Yu. Hello, Chris.
Hey, John.
I guess we should talk a little bit real quickly about where we are. So
yes.
let me just say something real quick. This is my first time recording one of these podcasts with a host, with a guest, that is with some new equipment that I bought, basically. And so we are not at my regular studios, which is the guest bedroom in my house. We are here in Crested, Butte, and Crested, Butte, Colorado.
Fantastic.
For those of you who are not familiar with it, talk about this place a little bit, Chris. What do you think about it?
I love it. I've been skiing around Colorado for most of my life and but it's my first time in Crested Butte. It still kind of has that small town feel. It's far enough away from Denver that it's not crowded, and but other than that, it's just another beautiful Colorado mountain town. I really love it. We're at 10,000 feet, 10,000, 10,500, something like that. And you certainly know that first couple of days when you get here.
Your breathing is really off, right?
Absolutely.
For us sea level Texans.
Yeah, absolutely.
In fact, I'm looking out behind Chris now, and I'm seeing both a babbling brook and then some of those ash trees that we see, and
aspen trees.
Is that what it is? Aspen trees, where they glitter, the sun glitters off of them, and they're absolutely beautiful. And just so you all know, just in case during the middle of this podcast, we're in the condo that me and my family are staying, and you may hear family members trouncing through the living room every once in a while, but Chris and I are set up here at the kitchen table.
Love it.
And by the way, I wanted to tell you earlier, I told my daughter that I was going to be doing a recording here in our living room / I guess this is the...
Studio B.
Yes. Studio B. That's right. So I told her we were going to be doing some recording. I said, a guy named Mr. Chris was coming by, and she said, "Oh yeah, I guess this is kind of like a podcast jackpot for you." In other words,
it could be very easily, right?
Well, not only Chris, but we are up here in Crested Butte for the Mountain Conference.
That's right.
Which is an Alcoholics Anonymous / Al-Anon conference. And we have, in fact, I'm going to do a whole podcast on probably covering the entire conference and my experience here, but we'll talk about that later. So, nonetheless, let's get to you, Mr. Chris.
All right.
You are the man of the 45 minutes hour.
And I just want to say I'm a huge fan of Sober Speak.
Oh, well, thank you.
Big fan. A lot of the people that I respect a lot have talked to you about their sobriety, and so I'm honored to be on your podcast.
I'm so glad you're here today. So I know you've listened to episodes before. You've talked about it. Just out of curiosity, does anything stand out from you from some of the others by any chance?
Oh yeah, there's a few of them. I think there's the comedy musings of. Oh gosh!
Doug?
Of Doug, yes.
Right.
Yeah. That is one funny dude.
He is something, man. That
right. David G.
Yeah.
Steve G.
Yeah.
A lot of guys I really have a lot of respect for. Yeah.
There's a lot of good content laid down. And just so you know, I don't know exactly when we're going to be releasing this, but we have at least 30 episodes you can go back and listen to at this point. So, all right. So, Mr. Chris. So, Chris and I, and this is one of those scenarios again where I know Chris, he knows me. We've known each other for several years, but many times in a meeting with people sharing 3 minutes at a time, you just don't get the story behind the story.
Right.
And I love what you have to share. I love the content. I love the delivery. I love your experience, but I've just never really heard what goes behind that story.
Right.
So with that being said, I just want to let you know that I've heard you talk about your family before, and I absolutely love it when you talk about your family. So why don't you share a look? By the way, I've been able to I've been able to relate to both your conquest and your challenges, so to speak. And when I say I can relate to them, that means I've had the same ones.
Well, right?
I have, right?
Absolutely.
I remember you once saying something like, "I'm so sorry, I created this," right? And I was thinking in my head, man, I get it, Chris.
Absolutely.
I created this, and we all have our challenges. So talk about your family first, and then maybe we'll back up there and just take this a step at a time.
Yeah, I have two daughters, 24 and 22-year-old daughters. I have a 3-year-old grandson from my oldest daughter, who is currently my favorite person on the planet.
I bet.
And I've been married for 29 years. I'm currently separated. And, yeah.
I see. I didn't even know that.
Know that. Say, hey.
Right.
Some things I don't share in a 3-minute meeting.
Right.
3-minute meeting request. But I grew up in Abilene, Texas. I've lived in the DFW area for 30 years now.
So you're a West Texas guy.
I am.
Yeah.
I grew up in Abilene. My
Did you go to school out there or anything? I mean,
I did.
When I say school, not only I'm assuming
obviously
you went
high
to
school.
High school, but did you go to?
I went to Abilene Christian University for a while.
Gotcha.
Flunked out of that pretty much. Not exactly, but I was close. And so spent some time at North Texas. After that, I decided a change of scenery would do me good. And
when you say North, you're talking about the University of North Texas?
UNT, that's right.
And for those who are listening to this and don't know where that is, it's a kind of a north of Dallas, Dallas, Texas.
In Denton, Texas.
Mm-hmm. All right, so you went to a UNT, and then how did you make it your way into the Frisco group? I'm assuming there's a story behind that.
There's a story, yeah, absolutely. Fast forward, it's funny, when I first got to AA in 2010, I thought I was so unique that my story was different than everyone else's, and of course it was, but I'm just a garden variety drunk, that is.
And so why don't you go ahead and tell everybody, just so you know, I usually have people identify themselves. I forgot on the front end. What's your sobriety date, Chris?
12/4/14.
12/4/14. So you got to Alcoholics Anonymous in 2010.
That's correct.
Right? And you're a garden variety drunk, and kind of take me from there. What do you want to say about that?
I suffered from terminal uniqueness, and it threatened to kill me. And
you didn't think you were alcoholic, or
I knew I was alcoholic, but I didn't think that AA would work for me. I came by AA. I can remember I was 19 years old going to Abilene Christian University, and my mother called me. And let me back up just a little bit. There's not a whole lot of drunkalog that's worthwhile, but there is a little bit. My dad was in the Air Force, but his passion was flying airplanes, and so he flew airplanes from the time I could remember, and flew. His other passion was saving people, like from a church perspective, right? And
okay.
So he was a big missionary guy, and so he would fly missionary trips and things like that. Long story short, he died in an airplane accident when I was 12 years old, and so a lot of that.
Well, I'm curious about that. We just recently had somebody on the podcast, Jackie, whose father was killed in a plane wreck, right? It was a mid-air collision. I did not know that. Right.
Wow.
Yeah. And so, this is just recently, and now you're and now I'm talking to you.
I just saw her this morning. Yeah.
Right.
We greeted together. Right?
Well, you have something in common. Obviously, you didn't know that. So, your dad, how did he die in a plane wreck? What happened?
There's a very wealthy family that owns all of the land between Abilene and Albany, Texas, and they're cattle people. Obviously, when they found oil on it, they're fantastically wealthy. And this guy wanted to learn how to fly. He happened to find my dad. My dad was a pilot trainer, and so we taught him how to fly. And he began to buy aircraft. And so the last aircraft that he bought was a Pitt Special, which is a biplane stunt plane. And my dad was teaching him how to fly this stunt plane, and the configuration of the stunt plane is there's a front pilot and a back pilot, and you drive it via stick. And the front seat came unhinged and rocked back and hit the back stick, and just as they were doing touch and goes, this seat came unconnected and slid back and hit the stick and just kind of put them into a loop into the ground.
Oh my goodness.
And so obviously that has an impact. I have two older brothers. One was in college, one was on his way to college, and I have a brother that's 3 years younger than I am. And so
do you remember what that day was like? I'm finding out.
It was I was shooting off a tennis ball cannon, which back in that day, before aluminum cans, you could take the top and the bottom off of Coke cans, and you could tape them together, and they would fit a tennis ball perfectly. Right. And you could put alcohol, or in my case, you could put my dad's aftershave in there and light it, and when it would explode, and it would shoot this tennis ball cannon. I can remember it as clear as day that my older brother Greg came running down the road, letting us know that my dad had died, and he'd heard it on the radio.
Your brother heard it on the radio?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, and so it was it was, obviously traumatic and unexpected, and so for about 3 years, I just kind of walked around.
What about I'm just sort of curious, like the hours afterwards and then the funeral?
Oh, I was in shock. I was absolutely in shock. One of the things I remember was our next door neighbor, a lady across the street from us, our neighbor, came running and just shoved my face into her massive breasts. And I just thought, this woman's going to suffocate me, with her big, humongous boobs, It's funny, the things that we hang on to, right? But that's just one of the memories. And then later on that day, her husband, who I adore, we were out in the backyard shooting off these tennis ball cannons, and he asked us to not do that. And I felt like, nobody asked you guys to show up at my house. We were upsetting some of the women or some of the adults in there by shooting off these cannons, and I was like, nobody asked you to come to my house. Just it's my dad died. If I can do whatever I want to, basically. And so, and it was a huge, huge funeral. We went to a fairly large church, and it was packed. My dad was, again, he was a missionary, and so there were lots of people attended his funeral. My mom had been a stay-at-home mom, and so she had to go back to work. Had to actually go back to school first and get a teaching degree, and so she immediately began to go back to college, and so that left my brother and I with a lot of time on our, alone, basically. My two older brothers were kind of out of the house by then, and so Mark and I, my little brother, and my mom was going to school full time, and so there were a lot of times where during the day there was nobody at our house, and so it was a feeling of loneliness compounded by this grief, and I had an acute feeling that there was a hole in my heart or my spirit, or the hole that people talk about. Right. That felt very raw to me for a long time. When I was 15 years old, my older brother Greg bought me a bottle of pre-mixed pina colada. A friend of mine and I drank it, and the hole was filled, and I had found the solution to all that, to feeling like an outsider, and to feeling all that grief that I was carrying around with me was just relieved. Blacked out, puked, woke up, couldn't wait to do it again, because I had found a solution for that. And
did pina colada become your drink of choice, or did you switch?
Man, it was a long time before I could drink pina colada again. After that first time, it was it was.
Were you singing that song, "If You Like Pina Colada"?
Yeah, that was actually a theme song of my first girlfriend and I.
Oh, really?
But, yeah. We won't go down that rabbit trail, man.
All right, so you have your pina colada mix,
right,
and then you wake up and you're thinking, I can't wait to do that again, and that's at
Loved
15.
It.
So take me from there.
I drank alcoholically from every time I could drink from after that, and obviously as a 15-year-old, it's difficult to be a daily drinker because my parents, again, were kind of strictly religious and did not have alcohol in the house as a rule. And our friends and the people that we ran around with were church people as well. And so there wasn't a whole lot of alcohol involved.
So talk about that kind of church background there. Like, in other words, did it stick? Was it something that helped you coming into AA? Was it something that hindered you coming into AA? I'm always curious about people's kind of spiritual background.
Yeah. And, I felt like my parents had a genuine relationship with a God of their understanding, but they were unable to pass that on to me. As soon as I could, I rejected the faith of my parents. As soon as I could get out of the house, I rejected the faith of. I was going to Abilene Christian University, and had rejected the faith of my parents.
What's it like being at something like Abilene Christian and not believing in that God? Is it?
Well, it just confirms kind of the outsider feeling, right? And it was a confusing thing for me because this is something that I had been I'd grown up into, I had been a part of my entire life. I should feel like a part of this the scene, and I did not feel like a part of that scene. It was just, I tell friends I always felt like I was 5 minutes late to conversations. You know, when you kind of walk up on a group of people having a conversation, and they all seem to know something that you don't know about what's going on, and that's kind of what my life felt like, especially at ACU. I just was not. I wasn't that guy. I was really, really depressed my freshman year. I didn't realize it at the time, but again, alcohol does not benefit depression tremendously.
No, it doesn't.
And
kind of ramps it up a little bit.
Oh, absolutely, right. Yeah, it's amazing how you can drink a depressant, and
but did
wonder
you
why you're depressed?
Right, but you weren't putting two and two together, I'm assuming, in college.
I was an 18-year-old kid. I was running and gunning, But I do remember my mom calling me, and I think it was my freshman year, and saying that she had started going to Alcoholics Anonymous.
Really?
And
so did you know that at that time that she had a drinking problem?
I had no clue.
Really?
I was clueless.
What about your brothers? Did they seem to know?
My brothers had already started going to Alcoholics Anonymous.
Really?
Yeah, so I had
like
two
both
older
of
brothers who were in and out of Alcoholics Anonymous. My mom had just started going to Alcoholics Anonymous. And my response to that was, there is no way I'm going down that cow path. That's not me. I don't care. I'm not following, that direction at all.
Down that cow path. Now that's a West Texas saying right there.
You know what I'm talking about. It was just the whole idea of following in their footsteps was not something that I was at all interested in. And it really, that bias against AA.
How did you feel when you said you were going to, did you feel with them, did you feel like they were overreacting, or did you feel like, what was your reaction to them all going to AA at that time?
This goes back to the idea of uniqueness, right? I was different from those people. They were weak. They had to have this spiritual solution. I didn't need to have I was not that weak. I was going to do it my way. It was going to be better. It was going to be, more artistic. I don't know what I thought,
Maybe a little bit more flair, like
some
maybe
flair
Edgar Allan Poe, or
right?
Something
Exactly,
like that. Right?
Something a little more dramatic, right, than just sitting in a chair and drinking coffee. and so, and even then, I had friends. My sophomore year of college, I was still going to Abilene Christian University, and I had moved off campus, and I was living with the party guys. The difference was, when it was time to get things done, these guys could stop and get things done, and I could not stop. And it was a source of frustration and really embarrassment more than anything else.
So you had some shame involved with it.
Oh, these guys are studying for finals, and I'm trying to, talk them into, let's go get, effed up again,
right.
And because I was incapable of putting a plug in it, even for a week, even for finals, and so as a result, I had a 1.6 grade point average, and I decided that ACU was not for me. I needed to go somewhere a little more liberal, with a little more liberal arts flair to it, and so
it's interesting. You and I have something in common. I went to Texas Tech my first semester out of high school, and I took 9 hours and made a 1.67, and that's tough.
All right. Yeah,
it's hard to do that.
It is hard.
But if you work at it, you can do
it. That's right. I always tell people, I was enrolled at Abilene Christian University. I can't really say I attended Abilene Christian University. Right. I was enrolled, though.
It so much helps if you go to class.
Yes.
All right.
It's a huge difference.
So you're an Abilene Christian, you're working on your story, you're experiencing some level of shame because you can't put the plug in the jug, right. And then...
So, of course, the answer is a geographic move to Denton, Texas, where my little brother's now going to college. And so I tried that for a couple of years with very similar results. Again, a lot of enrollment, not a whole lot of attendance. At that time, I was working at a restaurant chain called Steak and Ale. That I just loved,
This is so weird, Chris. We don't know this, but I used to work at Steak and Ale for many years. Yeah. Yes, many years.
Yeah, so I worked at the one in Carrollton, Texas, and I can remember Friday nights making, $100, $120, and by the time I got home, I had $18 left. You know?
Gotcha, because you went to the Bennigan's across the street for the
Give it all
late
back.
night happy hour.
That's right.
I understand that, my friend.
And at some point, I met a beautiful young lady who was just smoking hot and could drink me under the table, and I was in love, you know. And she said, "You don't have to live with your brother anymore. Let's get married." And I was like, "I'm all about
I'm
that,
in.
you know. I need somebody to take care of me anyway."
That's right.
So I was married when I was 23. My wife was 20, and we called her parents and said we're going to get married in 6 weeks. And they said, "Well, are you pregnant?" You know, I guess they just expected her to be pregnant. And no, she was not pregnant. We didn't have kids for 5 years, and so then I left my little brother's house and moved in. We moved into an apartment together and got married, and we were off to the races.
How long was it before you had kids?
5 years.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I was 28 when my first daughter, Jordan, was born.
Gotcha. And then just while we're on that, and how long was it before you had your second child?
They're 2 years apart.
2 years. Okay. Gotcha. All right. So you got married. Did your wife, was she a drinker as well?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Gotcha.
I mean, that was our favorite thing to do together. We were drinking buddies first and foremost. Yeah.
Wow. So, and did she ever quit drinking?
We both quit many times.
Gotcha.
For short periods of time, but
Okay.
never for good.
Gotcha. All right. So you're drinking, you're having kids, you're
Right.
doing the deal.
Right.
What significant happened between then and when you got to Alcoholics Anonymous?
3 arrests for DWI. Every 10 years, I would seemingly get arrested for DWI. I'm only on the hook for 2 of them. You know, I had a really good attorney the second one. But 2 kids. I finally in 2000 got my bachelor's degree. I'd kind of given up on school. I am the first generation of workers who sat in front of a computer and worked for a living, right? And so I kind of was able to ride that wave of IT and
when you say your first
computers.
generation in your family?
No, first generation in history.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
People
with you.
Who sat in front of a computer and typed things for a living, right?
We weren't out being a carpenter or a mechanic
Right.
or
We were IT
working in a
guys,
retail
right.
store. Right, I gotcha.
Right.
I gotcha.
So I was able to, for many years, just by having experience in that industry, not have to get a degree. But finally, I kind of reached a ceiling and had to go back and got my degree in 2000. And
I bet was it a different experience this time?
oh yeah, I was paying for it for one thing, right? And
Yeah.
and I had 2 children, and I realized that there's a lot riding on me being able to have that degree.
Right.
And so, I was graduated magna cum laude.
Wow.
Second time out.
Right.
Hey.
Yes. So, and I hear this. I have a very similar experience again. I went back to school after I got sober, actually. And though the first experience versus the second experience, it's amazing what you do if you actually apply yourself.
Right.
So, all right. So you went back and you got that degree.
So, and the reason that I bring that up is that was in May of 2000. I went to celebrate graduating from college and went over to some people's house that I had done a research paper with. And long story short, ended up back home. I had no idea how I'd gotten home. I'd somehow left my underwear along the way. My wife was really upset with me.
I bet she wasn't real happy about that.
And the only thing that I could think of in order to kind of get the heat off was I will go to AA. And so my adult trip into AA began in the summer of 2000.
2000 or 2000 or 2000? Oh, in 2000.
2000.
Okay. Gotcha.
And I lived in a small suburb of Dallas called the Colony, and went to the Colony group there. And by that time, I understood that I was probably alcoholic. It was just something that I was willing to. It was an illness I was willing to deal with. Mm-hmm. I was willing to put up with the consequences. I knew that every once in a while something was going to blow up, and I was okay with that. It was just the price of admission, right?
The price.
Every once in a while, I'm going to do something really stupid, and but I found a group of men at that group. Mm-hmm. And they were active in service, and so we would go to treatment centers, and one of them had a boat, and we'd go out on the boat, and it was like it's like a guys club, and so it was. But there was always that kind of lurking notion that someday, somehow, I was going to be able to drink like a normal person,
Right.
and I was just kind of biding my time until. And sure enough, I graduated from Alcoholics Anonymous, got my bachelor's degree in AA, and thank you very much. I'll take it from here, and went back to it, and with similar results. I mean, my drinking experience was, I was really proud of the fact that I did not drink in the morning. I was really proud of the fact that I was a lightweight. I was a 5 beer guy. That was like my sweet spot, right? So, 5 beers.
Right.
My wife could actually drink me under the table, but I was a 5 beer guy. But it was quickly becoming, you couldn't be my friend unless you drank.
Right.
I certainly wasn't hanging out with people who didn't drink like I drank.
We don't trust people who don't drink, right?
No, man. Yeah. No, there's none of that. So, and as a result, even though I had, I was living a middle-class dream. I had a stable job. I had a wife who was loyal and loved me. I had children. I had friends. My life was just getting grayer and grayer to the point that the high point of my life or my day really was preparing for that first drink. And more, all of my planning for my days was around when that first drink was going to happen.
Gotcha. Let me pause here real quick. So just we'll continue our conversation with Chris Yu in just a moment. Just a reminder, you are listening to Sober Speak. You can find us on the worldwide interweb. I said that one day and my wife was listening to these things. She goes, "I'm so embarrassed. You said interweb on your podcast." I go, "I know, it's just a joke." But, just so you all know, I really I understand it's not the interweb. But you can find us on the worldwide interweb as soberspeak.com. There you will find, like I said earlier, approximately 30 or so other episodes by the time we release Chris's. I'm not sure exactly when I'm going to do it, but it'll be 30 plus. You can also find the donate button on the website, which you can utilize if you're moved to do such, but no big deal if not. Please keep in mind this podcast is funded by you, the listener. Sober Speak is a self-supporting organization through our own contributions. We are not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution. We do not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorse nor oppose any causes. Now back to Mr. Chris Yu. Okay, so you were always thinking about that first drink.
Right.
And how to plan for it.
Right.
Take me from there.
It became a baffling aspect of my life. I could apply my will to just about everything that I wanted to. I had small children. You can make them do what you want them to do, when they're small. And so.
And it sounds like you had some success with your career as well.
I had a successful career.
Stable job.
Yeah, stable job. Lived in a small town, suburb of Dallas, and so had the benefits of the small town with the benefits of the large town as well. And so I'd set it up pretty well. But it was my drinking became Russian roulette, and every once in a while something would blow up, and I would drive home in a blackout, or I would scare my children, or I would be inappropriate with someone. And again, it was just a price that I was willing to pay for not having to face the fact that I was drinking alcoholically.
And so this was going on, it sounds like, from 2010 to 2014?
I would say the time period's 2003 to 2010.
Oh, yeah,
I was
okay.
sober for a couple of years at the Colony Group, and then graduated.
Yeah.
And by this time, I had started visiting the Frisco Group. I would do something stupid, and I would feel bad about it, and I would go to the Frisco Group. And
at the time, was that to get the heat off, or was that to...
It was becoming a combination of getting the heat off and also just looking for answers, right? I wasn't ready to have people tell me what to do yet, but I was becoming more and more interested in how you kept from blowing things up on a 6-week cycle, and the cycles were compressing.
Right.
It was getting, at first it was every couple of months,
right.
and then it was every 7 weeks, then every 6 weeks, and it was beginning to compress, and I was having a hard time having any zeal for life. I was really not interested in working, which did not please my employers very, very much. I wanted to minimize my work time.
Would you describe yourself as depressed during this time as well?
Definitely bouts of depression. Okay. Yeah.
Gotcha.
And it's funny. I read through the big book, and it talks about all the ways that we try to manage our drinking, and I could add to that list a few things, but I have certainly done each one of those, including natural wines. I thought at one point,
natural wines.
Natural wines. That's the trick right there.
Organic.
That's right. Organic. Everything's got to be organic.
That's right.
But in 2010, it was a summer night, just like any other summer night. I bought a 6-pack because, again, I'm a 5-beer guy, right?
Yeah.
I was coming back from the lake with some friends and got pulled over at about 12:45 at night. Went to jail in Carrollton, charged with my 3rd DWI. And I woke up and something broke. I just knew that nothing was going to change unless something changed. And so there was a window of willingness that had not been there before. I had been humiliated to the point where I was willing to be honest and open-minded.
Who got you out of jail?
My wife did.
Gotcha.
Yes.
I bet that was a fun meeting.
It was a pretty dark place, I have to tell you.
Right.
Yeah. It was a pretty dark place.
Okay, so that's in 2010. You had your 2nd DWI, and then your sobriety day is 2014 is what you said, right?
Yes, because they legalized marijuana in Denver.
Gotcha.
It was just a little blip.
I understand. Okay, so you haven't. So you.
My last drink was July 24th, 2010, but that is not my sobriety.
July
day.
24th, huh?
Yeah, in
That's
2 days.
Actually, my wife's sobriety date.
Is it really?
It sure is.
Wow, the things we have in common, John.
Yes,
We
that's
should have
right.
spoken
and by
before.
the way, when you were working at Steak and Ale, did you wear those shirts that had those little puffy shoulders?
Yes,
on them?
man, I love those shirts.
Yeah, little King Arthur type shirts.
I'm all about that.
Yeah.
So princess.
Yeah, that was the bomb. Okay, so all right, so 2010, you came into Alcoholics Anonymous. Looks like you got a little bit more serious. Did you get a sponsor? Work the steps?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. Barry, who's now at the Prosper Group, was my sponsor, and started going through the book immediately. And again, I'll never forget seeing the phrase restless, irritable, and discontented.
The RIDS, as they call it, RID.
That explained my entire waking existence in 3 words. And once I saw that, I knew that this book had something for me in it. Up to that point, I was interested in the doctor's opinion. But once I had seen restless, irritable, and discontented, I thought, these guys
know what they're talking about.
They know my story, right? And so
they've been reading my mail.
They have. They had been reading my mail, and I'm so grateful for the people at the Frisco Group because they were happy that I had been I'd been rolling in and out of there for 7 years after kind of graduating from AA the first time. And they were always happy to see me, and so I felt like I was at home. I felt like I could it felt like family.
Right.
And they loved me until I could love myself.
So take me to this point to where, and I think a lot of people could relate to this blip on the radar, so to speak, with the marijuana maintenance program.
Right. Yeah.
And so, like you said, it's legal, right? So
I've been sober for 4 years, and marijuana had always been part of my story. And marijuana really was my first love. Mm-hmm. Alcohol got the job done, but I loved marijuana. Mm-hmm. And so I had a full
And here we are in Colorado with all the dispensaries
every
all around
15
us.
feet in Denver, it seems like.
We've had to explain that to our kids while we're driving up here to Crested, Butte. They were saying, "Well, I thought that was illegal." Well, in some states,
it's complex.
Yeah, it's very complex.
There's federal land out here where it's a felony.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah.
Didn't
crazy.
even know that.
Yeah.
All right, so it had always been kind of one of your first love, so to speak.
Right.
And I mean, take me through that dance you had in your mind of thinking, should I not?
It's funny. I was excited about walking into a dispensary like an adult and having an adult conversation about. I thought it would be really interesting. I had no intention of buying any, but since I'm there, might as
and
well
where
buy.
were you? Where was the dispensary?
This was in Denver.
Oh, I'm sorry. So you were in Denver.
I had gone to Denver to go skiing.
Gotcha.
And it was legal in Denver.
Right.
And so
so you walked into the dispensary.
I just walked in to check it out.
Right. And and I have done that once before. I want
it's not recommended.
No.
It's
Yeah,
a really amazing smell.
I don't think I'm going back. Yeah, but the smell, and I'll never forget. They had signs on the wall that they said basically, how do you want to feel today?
Right.
And one was mellow, one was like energetic, I think they had up there, and one, I forget, there was a third feeling they had. Right. And none of them were bad, by the way. No
they're
bad
all positive feelings,
right? Yeah, positive. So it's like McDonald's. Do you want the number 1, 2, or 3? How do you want to feel today?
Exactly.
And I thought, oh my goodness.
Exactly.
I said, hey, can I take some pictures in here? They said, yeah, as long as you don't get any people in it. I said, okay. I took a few pictures, sent them to a couple of friends, but nonetheless, okay.
Yeah.
So you're in the dispensary. You're looking around. Take me from there.
Having the conversation. How do you want to feel today? Would you like to? We have high CBD. We have high THC, and my choice was. I always like to smoke it, and so I bought some flour, and my intention was to give it to a couple that my wife and I knew were hosting us in their condo. And my intent was to give it to him as a gift because I knew that he enjoyed it.
He partook.
Right.
But
that was not how it turned out. turned out that was me. And so it was a weekend long thing. And my experience was my experience was that it was taking up room in my head. Just like alcohol did, and just like marijuana did before I got sober, and that is a red flag to me today. That I begin to justify, I begin to plan, I begin to think about, how would I justify this in my own mind, and it's a medicinal thing, and again, I have no problem with alcohol in general. I have no problem with marijuana in general. I think it should be legal, but for me. I have an addictive personality. I have a history of addiction to both alcohol and marijuana, and I just can't use it safely or affect.
Right.
It becomes a question of what time of day is it gonna happen, not if it's gonna happen or do I have a reason for
right.
No, it's what time.
Yeah. The reason is it's that time.
I'm
of day.
awake.
Right. I'm awake and I'm ready.
Right.
So, okay, so I'm going to I'm a little reticent to ask this question because I know this is not your story, but it is your story in some form or fashion. You mentioned that you're and if this is not something you want to answer or go through on the podcast, I completely understand, right?
Edit it out.
What's that?
We can edit it out.
Yeah, we can edit it out, or you could just say I don't want to discuss that. So you said your wife could drink you under the table at certain points, and I'm just curious. So she never is. She still drinking today? Do you know?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. My wife quit drinking with me in 2000, and was not interested in going through that again in 2010.
Gotcha. Okay.
And so, and it really became a barrier in our relationship, and it expressed itself through me as me being resentful about 1,000 tiny things that all kind of boiled up to, I'm trying to be sober and you're not.
I get you. Okay. Enough said. Yeah, I can imagine. I can only imagine. So, all right. So, what else do you want to say about sobriety? I mean, you know what I want to do with you here? Or was there something you wanted to say?
No.
Okay. I have what I call I have a spinning wheel. Okay, that I play with people sometimes. Okay, and you could either pick a topic or a step, and it spins, and then we randomly get to talk about. I say we, you get to talk about. So
let's do that.
So do you want a topic or a step? Topic. I have 12 topics and 12 steps. Obviously,
let's do a step.
Let's do a step. Okay, so we're going to go over the spin wheel here, and you will hear it spinning just for. Okay, I'm going to keep it by me just so I can see it all. Are you ready?
Ready. Ooh.
Yep. You see it spinning at random. It'll land on something just like Wheel of Fortune. I kind of feel like Vanna White when I'm doing this.
You kind of look like
Do
Vanna
I look like
White?
Vanna White?
Yeah.
Kind of? Yeah, thank you. All right, so we are landed on step 3.
Ooh,
yes,
good one.
Yes. So let's talk about step 3. So made a decision. For those of you listening who may not know what step 3 is, step 3 through the Alcoholics Anonymous program is made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. So when you think about that particular topic, Chris, what comes to mind for you?
Well, again, I grew up in a religious background, and so the God that I brought into the rooms with me was mad at me. And I really felt like if I turned my will and my life over to the God of my understanding at that time, there would be a tsunami of consequences that I thought I had neatly evaded. And
I like how you put that. There would be a tsunami of consequences that you thought you had neatly evaded.
Yeah, it was. I was going to get Jobbed, you know. For those of you who know Job in the Bible, Job he's a decent guy, just going about his business. God's prospered him, and then he lets the devil just tear him into pieces, and he ends up scraping boils off of himself with with pottery shards in the in the trash heap.
So you thought you were going to get Jobbed.
That was my expectation, and so I was really not happy with the idea of that. It's funny. One of the tenets of Alcoholics Anonymous is, why don't you come up with a God of your own understanding? And so I had a sponsor who led me through the process of, why don't you build your own God? And that came across to me as sacrilegious,
right? But
I did anyway. And
on the back end, are you glad that?
Oh, absolutely, man. I needed a new God. The God my God lived in a little tiny box. Right. And
you could see the edges and the boundaries.
All parameters were exposed, right. There was nothing mysterious about it. Today, I firmly believe that the part of me that is me is of God and for God. And that there is no separation between my human experience and the God of my understanding, that they're one and the same. That I'm not saying that I am God, but I am made of God, and I'm of God. And that's not the religious, that's not what I heard, at least, when I was growing up. And very comforting to me. And through experience, my first experience was asking God to keep me sober for a day and it working. And I've just built on it from there.
How about that?
And my experience today is the God of my understanding is ultimately trustworthy. And I can give the God of my understanding today anything and feel confident that it's going to be taken care of. Now, rarely is it taken care of the way I think it should be taken care of, or in the time that I think it should be taken care of.
Right.
But it's always taken care of in a way that's probably best, not for me, but just for the universe in general.
Right.
And so, but that was not something that I could just decide. That was something that I had to experience on an ongoing basis for a little while, and just trusting my God. And there were times that in my sobriety, where I was kind of like Conan, either you help me or we're done, being buddies, and my God has always come through, always. It's weird. I did not expect that. 99, maybe 4 nines, 3 nines,
yeah,
100%. No,
right.
I was not expecting that.
Very cool. Well, Chris, I have so much enjoyed having you here.
Thanks for having me, John.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure, and with this backdrop, even as you're talking, I'm looking out at those aspen trees, right? Is that what they're called?
Beautiful aspen.
And this has been a good experience. You will always, to me, be remembered as number one, just having a good experience with you, recording this, and then my first. Away from, what'd you call it?
Studio B. There we go.
We're here in Studio B. Okay, my friend.
You'd like to thank the producers?
Yeah. Yeah, and everybody involved.
The sound
with
engineers.
This. Yeah. Hey, you guys can all go take a break now.
Thanks, makeup.
We're almost, makeup. And you know what? My daughter was right. This was the podcast jackpot, because I found you here at this conference, and we were able to get this recorded. So anyway, God bless you, my friend. Thanks for coming to the Studio B, and we shall talk to you soon. All right?
Sounds good.
Bye-bye. Hey, everybody, John M. here. That was Chris. You really did enjoy spending time with him and getting to know him a little bit better up in the mountains of Colorado. But as I promised on the beginning of this episode, wanted to provide you some listener feedback. Thank you for everybody who has written in and or called in. I really do appreciate it. This first piece of listener feedback is from Vicky. It says, "Hey there, JM. I am such a big fan of your podcast," with a little exclamation point. And it says, "I was listening to you and Gavin." Gavin is one of our previous episodes, if you want to go back and listen to him. But I was listening to you and Gavin this morning, and you mentioned the meditation app, Insight Timer. I use this app every day and love it. Tell me what you spoke of in the podcast. I want to check it out. Hope all is well with you. And that's from Vicky. And so she was referring to a particular podcast. A particular session within the Insight Timer that I listen to on a consistent basis. It is a step. It is step related, I guess, first step, 11 step, whatever you want to call that. And I do that many times. If anybody wants to know what that is, feel free to write into me and I'll be glad to respond to you. Dave writes in, he says, "Hi there. I stumbled across your podcast today and I'm really enjoying it. I came across it by just searching, quote, sober. I need a little motivation during the day sometimes, and I just try out different podcasts. I like your line of questioning, keying into the different areas of how people came to realize they were alcoholics. I'm always astonished at how the core components of our stories match. I'm in, and I'll leave out the place where he's in, but I'm 78 days sober. thanks to God and to Alcoholics Anonymous. Resources like yours are great substitutes for when I'm too swamped at work to get a chance to get to a meeting. I'm also in school and I drive a bit for class. I'm looking forward to tuning in. Thanks for your work and keep it up. Well, thank you so much, Dave. I really appreciate it. Your email, as many of these emails when I get them during the day, made my day. This is a labor of love. I really enjoy doing it, and hopefully we're touching somebody somewhere out there in this great land of ours. And finally, from Caitlin. Caitlin wrote in, said, I've listened to all the podcasts so far, and I absolutely love them. My favorites so far are Michelle D., Dawn C., and Jenny K. And she says, it would be awesome to hear your story on Sober Speak sometime, with an exclamation point. I have caught bits and pieces from your interviews with other people, but it would be cool to know what the host story is too. Just a thought, smiley face. I hope you have a great day. Sincerely, Caitlin. Well, someday, somehow, possibly that will take place. But as I have said before, my calling, at least at this point, is to provide a platform for great stories like the other folks that you have heard. But you never can tell. One day, maybe I'll give up the control, let somebody sit at this other mic here, and I will tell my story. But anyway, God bless all of you. Thank you for tuning in to Sober Speak. Hope our paths will cross either virtually or physically one day soon. Bye-bye now.